Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 12 2022 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was a much better overall week for both my against the spread and straight up predictions. So, against the spread and straight up, after having respective 5 and 9 weeks both against the spread and straight up, this week so far, I have got another winning week under my belt. So far this week against the spread, I have gone 7-5-1, with the one push coming at the Chicago-Atlanta game, which was won by 3 points, so that was a push there. And straight up, I went 9-4 this week, so a double-digit week possible in a 14-game week is always very good. That equals with the 57.7 and 69.2% respectively for this week. And now overall for the year against the spread, I'm now 78-80 with 5 pushes. And straight up, I am now 95-67-1. So that equals up to 49.4% against the spread. And straight up now, I am now 58.6%. So I definitely moved up in the right direction with my straight up percentage after the rate I was going last week. I did move up about a few thousandths of a percentage point from that 58 to now getting back to about 59, so I am good with that. Though my against the spread percentage did go up very slightly again, but I am very confident I can get a above 500 season with 6 weeks to go in the regular season before the postseason begins. But I am very excited about that. And what a wild week in the NFL it was this past week. You had the Cowboys-Vikings game, the game of the week, where everybody was excited. You ended up seeing the largest road win for the Dallas Cowboys in franchise history, a 37-point victory against the Minnesota Vikings. That was an absolute drubbing. The game basically ended after Micah Parsons stripped Kirk Cousins on the third down play on great left rookie tackle Christian Darrisaw, who left the game for concussion. That definitely wasn't because of the end of the game, because Christian Darrisaw, as good as he is, he does not amount to 34 points. But that was just, that was an absolute drubbing, which gave the Cowboys a lot of confidence, and the Vikings are definitely questioned. They are the first team in NFL history with an 8-2 record with a negative point differential. Also, fun fact, by the way, the Jaguars, who are 3-7, have a positive plus 11 point differential. So that can tell you really how fortunate or how unfortunate luck can be with teams. But I still believe the Vikings are a good team, and the Jags still suck because they have William Lawrence. But I digress. But but that was a crazy game. The Pats-Jets game, boy, if you like defense and you like no offense at all, if this was like the 1930s, 1940s when the NFL first, this was great football. But by God, in 2022, when you watch a game like that, I think I heard Pro Football Reference say that was the second game in NFL history to not have any offensive or defensive touchdown, and the only touchdown that came in the game was a punt return by Marcus Jones, the rookie, who was great at Houston at doing that very specific thing. And actually, that was the first time in 534 punts this year through that point to have a punt return touchdown. There were already 2 kickoff return touchdowns at that point. Cordell Patterson, who broke the NFL record, he now has the all-time record for the most kickoff return touchdowns in NFL history at 9. So kudos to him, and that was basically the reason why the Falcons beat the Bears in that game, in my opinion. But people are talking about, is Cordell Patterson a Hall of Famer? I do not think so. I think the difference between him and Hester is that Devin Hester is the all-time return leader for touchdowns. So I think that's kind of the big difference there. But there was that game. Bengals-Steelers was great. That was the game I was able to watch. Joe Burrow becomes the third fastest quarterback to get 10,000 passing yards, only trailing Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert in only his 36th game. He also has now tied the Bengals franchise record for the most 350-plus passing yard and 4 TD games in franchise history. I believe he's now tied with Boomer on that one. Even though it's crazy, he has 7 turnovers against the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2 games this year. The rest of the games, the other 8 games that he's played, he only has 3. So that tells you really how good that Pittsburgh defense is. And TJ Watt, one of the great defensive plays of the year with that interception. So, that he got. So there was that. Trying to think of some other, Washington kept rolling along. They beat up Houston. Yada, yada, whatever. But good for Heineke, and apparently Ron Rivera announced today that Taylor Heineke, regardless when Carson Wentz can come back, or regardless when Carson Wentz will be active to play, he will be the backup, and Taylor Heineke will be moving forward. And the best part was, Ron Rivera said today that what was the biggest reason why you chose to go with Taylor Heineke over Carson Wentz for the rest of the year? He basically said what everybody thought, they were winning. So I appreciate that from Ron Rivera. So there was that. Trying to get some other odd little key moments in the game. The Bills-Browns, they had to play that in Detroit. Also, very quickly to everybody out there, if anybody that watched in Buffalo or in the Rochester, Buffalo area, my best wishes to all of you and your family trying to get out of these 77 inches of snow that fell over the last 3 days over the weekend due to that lake effect snowstorm that came through Buffalo, Cleveland, and all that area. It was insane seeing how much snow was there. I saw a video of tractor trailers having to sit out there for 10 hours. So everybody out there in Buffalo, if anybody that watches out in Buffalo, anyway, even one person, best of wishes to you and your family, getting out of all that snow and surviving. But they had a nice bounce back game. The Ravens had a gritty, ugly 2000 type Ravens game where Lamar and the offense didn't do anything, and the defense had to shut down Baker and whatever remnants of that defense was. But also all the Lamar fans out there, how does it feel that the Lamar Jackson got picked up by Brandon Roy, a big fat defensive lineman? Kudos to him. He got his first pick of his career. But that's a guy you get picked off on, Brandon Roy, the athlete that he is. But they get the win, so there was that. So, but those are my quick thoughts, and like I said, as I go through my picks, I will go through the rest of them. It is Thanksgiving week here in America, so everybody out there, I would like to say Happy Thanksgiving to everybody that's going to celebrate this holiday in America. I know Canada does their Thanksgiving a month earlier, but enjoy what I always say are the 3 F's in Thanksgiving. There's family, there's food, and there's football. Those are the 3 F's in Thanksgiving. Family, food, and football, baby. So, that's what I'll be doing on Thursday. I hope everybody out there that watches has a great Thanksgiving as well. But with it being Thanksgiving week, unlike last year, there are no buys this week. So we get a full 16-game Thanksgiving slate for the whole week. And so there are no buys. And now it is time to get into my predictions for this week. So, on Thursday, on Thanksgiving, in the 2 annual games that happen every year, when the 7-3 Buffalo Bills travel to Detroit to take on the 4-6 Detroit Lions, the Buffalo Bills are 9.5-point favorites in this game. I am going to take Buffalo here to win straight up. Then I'm going to take Detroit plus 9.5. Then the next game, the late afternoon game, as always, when the 7-3 New York Giants travel to Dallas to take on the 7-3 Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are 8.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Dallas here, minus 8.5, and Dallas straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-4 New England Patriots travel to Minnesota to take on the 8-2 Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are 3-point favorites in this game, and I'm taking a doozy here. This is Kirk Cousins in his most uncomfortable time, nighttime, prime time, Kirk Cousins. And this is going to be a rare moment for him, but I do think he gets this, he does get this primetime victory, so give me the Minnesota Vikings here, minus 3, and the Minnesota Vikings straight up. And then on Sunday, when the 5-5 Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to Cleveland to take on the 3-7 Cleveland Browns, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Tampa Bay here, minus 3, and Tampa Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-4 Cincinnati Bengals travel to Tennessee to take on the 7-3 Tennessee Titans, the Cincinnati Bengals are a very slight favorite at minus 1.5. This was a very tough game for me because I do think these two teams were more competitive. And look, there was the playoff game from last year where Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times. I think this game, it's a very sneaky, not many people are going to be talking about it because it's Cincinnati, Tennessee. I think this is one of the sneaky games of the weekend. But I'm going to take Cincinnati here to copy what they did in the postseason. So that's why I'm going to take Cincinnati here minus 1.5 and Cincinnati straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-8-1 Houston Texans travel to Miami to take on the 7-3 Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are 11.5-point favorites in this game. That is a big number to take. But as what I've seen out of the Houston Texans for all this year, and even though the Texans have been competitive, they couldn't even cover 10. They couldn't even cover the 10 against the Commanders. So I like Miami here minus 11.5, and Miami straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-8 Chicago Bears travel to New York. Take on the 6-4 New York Jets. The New York Jets are 4-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take the New York Jets here to win straight up, but regardless, because I did see that Justin Fields did injure his shoulder, regardless of Justin Fields' injury, I'm going to take the Chicago Bears +4. Let's see if it's either Justin Fields or Trevor Siemian gets into the game. I'm going to take the Bears +4 regardless. And then the next game, when the 5-6 Atlanta Falcons travel to Washington to take on the 6-5 Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me the Washington Commanders here, -3, and the Washington Commanders straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-7 Denver Broncos travel to Carolina to take on the 3-8 Carolina Panthers in what I would call the cruddy, horrible toss-up game of the week, where you have two of the most inept offenses in the National Football League. I'm going to go with the better defense, and to me, that's been the Denver Broncos. So, if this was 3 points, I actually was really thinking about hedging, but since it is a field goal, I do think that they can win by a field goal, because that's basically how the Broncos only can score offensively for the most part. So, give me the Denver Broncos here, -2.5, and the Denver Broncos straight up. Then the next game, when the 7-3 Baltimore Ravens travel to Jacksonville to take on the 3-7 Jacksonville Jaguars, the Baltimore Ravens are 4-point favorites in this game. Give me Baltimore here -4, and Baltimore straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-5 Los Angeles Chargers travel to Arizona to take on the 5-6 or 4-7 Arizona Cardinals, the Los Angeles Chargers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Chargers here -2.5, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-7 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Seattle to take on the 6-4 Seattle Seahawks, the Seattle Seahawks are 4-point favorites in this game. Give me the Seattle Seahawks here -4, and the Seattle Seahawks straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-7 Los Angeles Rams travel to Kansas City to take on the 8-2 Kansas City Chiefs in one of the biggest spreads of the year, and probably one of the most shocking ones to me, the biggest one I'm going to take. The Kansas City Chiefs are 14-point favorites in this game. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs here -14, and the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. I could see people, especially if Stafford can get out of concussion protocol again, taking the Rams +14. But after how inept I've seen that Rams offense, I'm going to take the Chiefs regardless if Stafford plays or not. So, all right. Then the next game, when the 4-6 New Orleans Saints travel to San Francisco to take on the 6-4 or 5-5 San Francisco 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers are 8.5-point favorites in this game. For some odd reason, I believe the Niners will win this game, but I do not think the Niners cover the 8.5. So give me the New Orleans Saints here, +8.5, to cover against the 49ers. I'm kind of nervous about this one, because I know the Niners are a much clearly better team than the Saints. But for some odd reason, I just feel, that the Saints will cover this game for some odd reason. And then the final two games, when the 3-8 Green Bay Packers, when the 3-8 Green Bay Packers travel, for the 3-7 or 3-8 Green Bay Packers travel to Philadelphia to take on the 9-1 Philadelphia Eagles. They are 3-8. The 3-8 Green Bay Packers travel to Philadelphia to take on the 9-1 Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Philadelphia here -6.5, and Philadelphia straight up. And lastly, on the Monday night game, when the 3-7 Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Indianapolis to take on the 4-5-1 Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Indianapolis here, -2.5 in Indianapolis, straight up. All right, it's time for my thoughts on each game. The Buffalo Bills over the Detroit Lions. Look, I want to give the Bills a lot of credit. Their running game, which has been very non-existent for most of the year, outside of the quarterback Josh Allen, they had a nice get-back game against the Browns. The Bills running backs James Cook and Devin Singletary had a combined 29 carries for 172 yards. That is by far, obviously, their best running game as running backs as a team this year. And I also want to give the Bills defense credit. They held Nick Chubb to 19 yards. Josh Allen, the offense, Allen did throw that touchdown to Stephon Diggs. Tyler Bass made a lot of, consistent field goals. I think he made 4 or 5 field goals, which have kind of inched them along throughout the game. And I thought the Bills, they had that big field goal blocked on Cade York and the quarterback sneak stop on Jacoby Brissett. So I thought the Bills overall had a good game. I'm just happy that, with the snow, I changed my pick to Cleveland +9.5. And then I forgot to tell everybody when I realized that they moved to Detroit. I kept it at that, so I got the pick right. Overall, I thought the Bills did a good job. And this is weird because, again, the Lions, they had their first 3-game winning streak since 2017, and the Lions have played consistent football. Or, you're seeing this Lions team may finally reach their potential. If they somehow beat the Bills on Thanksgiving, which again, the Lions always kind of this awkward history on Thanksgiving, where they usually lose most often in this game. And there's always a petition every year, why do we have to watch the Lions on Thanksgiving? Shout out to Half Inspect, sorry buddy. And I kind of agree on those parts. But this Lions team this year, I'm kind of on board watching them. Like, they're not a bad team, and they're playing better football. You know who's leading the league in rushing touchdowns right now, everybody? Boys and girls? Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams, the backup Lions running back, is leading the league in rushing touchdowns at 12. And Kirby Joseph, their very good rookie, in 2 of the last 3 games, he has 3 interceptions, including the big second one that basically took out the game for the Lions. And the Lions defense, for a team in the Giants that does not turn it over very often, they forced 3 turnovers on the Giants the other day. And for the Lions defense, which have been much maligned for most of the year, rightfully so, they held the Giants at their second lowest total rushing yards of the season. So, I think, look, the Bills, obviously, I know the secondary is banged up. Hopefully they'll get Poyer back, and they'll get Trey White back soon. They definitely also, kind of have some other kind of, middling injuries and, linebackers, Gregory Rougeau. Like, they're going to get healthy, and their defense will get better, and they're clearly the better team. And I have much more confidence in Buffalo than I do the Giants, in terms of New York teams. So that's why I'm going to take them to win. If the Lions can beat the Bills, then you might have to think, the Lions, they're not out of it now by any means. 4 straight wins, being the Giants and Bills, both New York teams back-to-back in good weeks, 5 and 6, I would then say, and they're getting Jameson Williams back practicing today, or they opened up his practice window. This Lions team, if they get this win, which again, I'd be a little surprised, but again, they've been a bit hot, and it's a home game for them. They could, get back into this wild card race for some odd reason. I don't know why, but I think they could. So, and that's why I'll get the Lions plus 9.5. But I just really like with the Bills. They played this game last year at Thanksgiving against New Orleans. Beat the tar out of them. Allen usually plays pretty well. That Lions defense has still been mostly bad. I think the Bills receivers are gonna have great days. The Lions really can't. I think really pass the ball that well. And Jared Goff, in the couple games, the other game he played on Thanksgiving, he really wasn't that great. So, it's like this is one of those things to where, look, the Bills, they're already in Detroit, so they don't need to travel. They're fine. They'll get the next 4 days kind of rest or prepare in Detroit for the game. And I just feel like the Bills, they are clearly the better football team. They kind of have the confidence. They have the more talent. But I'm going to give the Lions their credit with their 3 straight wins, and I think they cover the 9.5. I think the Lions make this game going into the 4th a very close one to where you could say the Lions could win it. But I think at the end of the day, just like most Thanksgiving games for the Lions are, they end up taking it out. So, shout out to Half Inspect, buddy. Hope you can enjoy your Thanksgiving, and hopefully the Lions maybe can win for you in a way and lose for you in another. And if Half Inspect watches, he'll appreciate that reference. So, that's why I like the Buffalo Bills here to win straight up at the Detroit Lions plus 9.5. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the New York Giants. This is one to where, look, the Giants just got shell-shocked by the Lions. The Daniel Jones had about 150-plus pass attempt streak. He had the most attempted passes without an interception. That got broken up by the Lions. This was the first game the Giants had all year that was not a one-score game. They lost by 13 points. And they had 6 significant injuries, including Adoree Jackson, who sprained his sprained his MCL, and he's out 4 to 6 weeks. And Wendell Robinson, their very good rookie wide receiver, he is out for the year with a torn ACL himself. So that now is, I think now, Sterling Shepard and Wendell Robinson out for the year with torn ACLs. The Giants' offensive line did okay, but, they're going to go up against this Cowboys defensive front they already played before. Dak Prescott's never lost to Daniel Jones in his career. Daniel Jones has a victory over the Cowboys, but I believe that was the game where Dak was out and Andy Dalton was the quarterback, and Jones beat Dalton in the final game of the 2020 season when that happened. Also, I just think with the Cowboys, their offense was so sensational. It was the first time since 1980 where they had 2 Cowboy running backs both have 2 touchdowns. Tony Pollard had 2 receiving touchdowns, and Ezekiel Elliott had 2 rushing touchdowns, which I believe gave Zeke his 50th career rushing touchdown, which was very nice for him. And Micah Parsons, look, he has 9 sacks. He's had his 5th game this year with 2+ sacks. I think they said only Reggie White in the shortened year has the most games with 2+ sacks in a single season. I do think Micah has a good chance to break that record because of the offensive line's competition they're playing coming up. But I just think with the Cowboys, like, this is a team that, is going to hopefully use that momentum. And you could argue, look, they went last year at this moment, they lost the game. It was awkward. Then they lost the game against the Raiders and last year at Thanksgiving in that awkward overtime game where Carlson won at the end after Anthony Brown caused the pass interference on Deshaun Jackson. But yeah, I just feel like with the injuries to the Giants, the short turnaround, and just the lack of offensive firepower that the Giants I think are going to have going into the game, I don't really feel confident the Giants can play competitively unless they just pound it down the throat with Saquon. That's the best way. And I know the Cowboys' run defense isn't great, but that's essentially the way where I feel like if the Cowboys can sell out for the run, I do think that with their corners and the lack of weapons they have on the outside, I think, make Daniel Jones beat you. And I just think, again, in those moments where he hasn't been able to run, he hasn't been able to show you that he can't win those games. I think it'll be an interesting game because I do feel like Daboll will have the team motivated. He will get them in a better spot, and it's a division rivalry, so they'll be motivated to play. And the Giants know that they should have won that game back in Week 3 against Cooper Rush, the backup. So, at the end of the day, with what I saw out of the Cowboys, they'll kind of carry that momentum. They'll remember what happened last year at Thanksgiving. Most of the guys were there. They'll take that anger and put that out onto the Giants to put themselves at the clear best wildcard spot moving forward for the rest of the year at 8-3 and have a huge significant tiebreaker over the Giants in terms of division head-to-head and conference standing. So, that's why I like the Dallas Cowboys here, minus 8.5, and Dallas Cowboys straight up. The next game, the Minnesota Vikings over the New England Patriots. This is one to where, look, the Cowboys defense did a sensational job. Yesterday, the Cowboys sacked Kirk Cousins 7 times, which is the most for him in a single game in his NFL career. And they also snapped the person with the longest active touchdown streak was Kirk Cousins. He had thrown a touchdown in 39 straight games entering Sunday. Obviously, that streak got broken with the very limited 150 total yards total offense they had. And that was the largest loss at home for the Vikings since 1963 when they lost by 42 against the St. Louis Cardinals back in 1963. Also, I want to give them credit, or I guess the Cowboys back end for credit, even though you could argue the defensive front did a better job. They held Justin Jefferson to about 33 yards, which was the second fewest amount of receiving yards he had for this year for him. And look, Kirk Cousins, this was the problem I had. I bet on a guy that in going into the game and only won 25% of the games that he had played in the 4 o'clock window, and he let everybody down again. Now he falls to 7-22. And this is what I'm saying. I know. And I'm saying, if anybody out there, if you took New England plus 3 or took New England outright to win, you have every primetime or late game statistic going for you. You do. Kirk Cousins in primetime television. It's not Monday, so it's not the ultimate worst. But Kirk Cousins in primetime television has a putrid and pathetic record. And they're just coming off a butt kicking that they had not seen in about 60 years. Okay? Or literally 60 years. Okay? What I am saying is, I think that the Vikings take that and use that as motivation. Because, for the Patriots, look, the Patriots and Jets, that was a very weird defensive fest there. Defense, very little run game from either team. Mac Jones outplayed Zach Wilson, but that was the lowest bar that you would probably ever seen in an NFL game, period. But I know he threw for about 250 yards and, completed over double the passes that Zach Wilson did. But, yeah, I just think, that was my biggest problem, was that the Pats basically won off a punt return. There had been 538 punts through Week 10 this year, and Marcus Jones had the first punt return touchdown of the year, like I said before. I think the Vikings, losing Darisaw will be significant because they're going to be playing Matt Judon, who is leading the league in sacks at 13 through 10 games. So he will definitely be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. But it's one of those things to me where I just think, again, the Vikings just have way too much talent. And I just think the way Mac Jones has played, he's been very fortunate. He's got 3 straight wins under his belt. But I just think that when you're playing against the Vikings, who are a much better quarterback and a more seasoned quarterback, I think Kirk is going to be able to make more effective plays against the Patriots defense than I think Mac will against the Vikings defense. Unless the Pats run it, because there have been times this year where the Vikings defense has been susceptible to the run. And they do have Ramondre and Damian to run the ball. I think that'll be the difference, but I just don't think the Pats can generate enough of a running game to allow Mac to have that play action passing. And I just think Mac just has hold on to the ball too long, and with guys like Darius and Daniil and some of the other Vikings talent they have in pass rushers around that area, I think that the Vikings get this victory to give Kirk a rare primetime victory. I'm going to be kicking myself if he loses this game, but I think if they lose to the Patriots and they lose to the Cowboys in back-to-back weeks the fashion they do, I think people now are really going to start questioning the Vikings. They'll still win the NFC North because the North is still so bad, but their legitimacy will definitely be utterly questioned, and I have to say, someone that's kind of supported the Vikings or understood them, that'll be fair if they lose this one. So that's why I like Minnesota here, -3, and Minnesota straight up. The next game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Cleveland Browns. This is one to where, look, Cleveland, they've been competitive in a lot of games, but they are 1-5 in one-score games. That's a big difference there, to me, where it's like, I look at the Browns and I don't see a lot, right? I see that they're competitive in a lot of games. They're a good, fun game to watch. They're competitive. They don't pull a Dallas, Minnesota, where you're never gonna pull a Browns game, but they can't win. And also, Nick Chubb got held to 19 yards. How rare do you see that? And it was just another lackluster running day. Look, Jacoby Brissett had 3 touchdowns, but in some of the big opportunities he had that failed 4th down QB sneak. Cade York missed a kick, and just the Browns just had this really awkward sense of plays to where, like, every time they tried to make a big play or would make a big move, they just had to settle for a field goal to get a stop or a turnover at the worst time. They could never get them going. And also, I just want to say the Browns defense, with as much decent individual talent they have on it, they have the second most points this year overall in the league. So, and when you look at the Bucks, what was the big reason why they won against the Seahawks in Germany 2 weeks ago? It was because of the running game. Rashad White was their first 100-yard rusher since week 1 of this year when they had Leonard Fournette run for over 140-plus yards. And the good news is that the best thing is they're playing a Browns defense. And in the last 2 games, they've averaged 183 rush yards given up per game, which is downright absolutely dreadful. Tom Brady also in his career against the Browns all time is 7-1. And he is 7-0 all time when he has been the home team. The only time that he lost was a game on the road at Cleveland. Again, this is and for the Browns fans, this is the last bit of suffering that they have to go through before the suspension of Deshaun Watson ends, and he can officially come back against the Texans next week. I think, can the Browns be competitive? Sure. Jacoby's been a good veteran. He's been around Tom. They have a good enough roster. They have a better offensive line. They can run the ball better, so they can control the clock. But at the end of the day, when you have Brady, that it was to me where I looked at it and said that Brady and them are just going to win this game based off the talent they have. The rest of they should get some guys back on the defensive end like Antoine Winfield, maybe Carlton Davis and some of their secondary guys. And I just think again the Bucks are just. They're the better team at this point. And I'm going to judge Tom Brady with the weapons he has over Jacoby and what Jacoby has. Should be an interesting game, but I think Tampa, they're on a roll. They're rested. Brady usually wins off buys, and they get the 6-5 before they get into their big Monday night game at home against the Saints next Monday. So that's why I like Tampa Bay here, -3, and Tampa Bay straight up. The next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Tennessee Titans. This is one to where, man, this is a tough one for me. The Cincinnati Bengals defensively in the first half of that game against Pittsburgh yesterday, they were getting run up and down the field, 20 yards, 20 points put on them, 230 plus yards given up in that first half. But fortunately in the second half, they held the Steelers offense to only 10 points and 139 total yards, which I thought was really impressive. And I'm going to give a shout out to Samaje Perine. He had a career high in touchdowns with 3 receiving touchdowns, which I thought was, really good and impressive. And to me, it's one of those things where the Bengals, look, T. Higgins had a sensational game. They lost Joe Mixon due to concussion. And Joe Burrow, again, like I said before, he's had only 3 turnovers in 8 other games. He's had 7 against Pittsburgh. For some odd reason, whenever he plays somebody else, he usually can hold the ball, be effective. And I just realized that was the first time he'd ever won a game in his career where he's had 2 or more turnovers. I think they said they had a statistic when he has 2 or more turnovers, he's 0-8 in his career. So that was the first one he had when he's had 2 or more turnovers. And they are playing a Titan team that is, boy, are they itching at the bit. This Titans team still remembers when Ryan Tannehill literally coughed up the bit there at, in that divisional game. He threw 3 horrible interceptions, which after Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times. And look, the Titans, they are the toasted butter of the NFL. They are a solid team that, play their type of football mostly every single week. And after their 0-2 start and getting shellacked by Buffalo, they've won 7 out of the last 8 games. And Mike Vrabel, look, this is a great stat. He has the most games won as an underdog since 2018 when he took over for the coach. He's got 21. And against the spread, just in terms of pure picking, he is 24-14. He's won 63% of his games, either outright or against the spread. So that is incredibly impressive for Mike Vrabel and his staff to do in those spots. But that's what the Titans usually always do. Whenever you put a lot of expectations on them, they usually fail. And when you don't put any expectation on them, they usually succeed and do it in a great way. Also, I'm going to give David Long some credit for big 3 3 big TFLs. And big Jeff Simmons are getting a big crucial sack on that last drive, which pushed the Packers back. And also, the Titans won their first game in Lambeau since 2004. And hey, Derrick Henry, not a bad passer. He's 5-6 passes in his career with 2 passing touchdowns at this point through his career. And it's just weird, but it's like Tannehill also has the 3rd most wins by quarterback since Week 10 of 2019. Only, I believe, Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady have more wins in that span. And again, I want to take the Titans so bad, but I objectively just know if Jamar Chase, who should be off crutches, should be able to practice, if he's able to play, and just looking at what the Bengals and Titans did last year, I just think the Bengals they have the more talent, they have the better team, and even if the Titans pass rush, with all the talent they have, can get to Joe Burrow, I just think Tannehill, if it comes down to it, they can limit the running game, Burrow will make one more play than Tannehill can. And with the number being so small at 1.5, I have to go with the Bengals on the line here after all that talk I just made about Mike Vrabel's coaching as an underdog. So it should be a great game. And like I said, this is a sneaky game for game of the week, or probably this is the game of the week just in terms of context and circumstance. But I'm going to take the Bengals here. I think Joe makes one more key play than Tannehill does, and I just have enough confidence in that to take the Bengals in that game. So that's like Cincinnati here, -1.5, and Cincinnati straight up. The next game, the Miami Dolphins over the Houston Texans. This is one to where, look, the Texans are the worst team in the league. Davis Mills, right after Taylor Heineke threw an interception, he gave the Commanders the ball right back, and he threw a pick 6 to, I believe, Justin Forsett. I believe he got the pick 6, and that was basically the game. The Texans defense has given up the 2nd most yards in the league, and they have the 2nd fewest first downs, and they have the worst rushing defense in the entire league. And they're playing one of the hottest teams in the league, one of the genuine Super Bowl contenders in the Miami Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa, in his 7 starts where he has been able to finish games, he is an MVP candidate. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, he would be 3rd on my list behind Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and then it would be Tua in his 7 starts where he's finished 7-0 with a 71.8% completion percentage, 2,155 yards, 18 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions. Tua, even with the other game added in against Cincinnati, leads the NFL in several passing categories, and they are coming off their best rushing game of the year. The Texans are winless at home and have one lucky win against the Jags, where the prince that was promised, Trevor Lawrence, crapped the bit. The Texans, again, this is just one of those games. Again, it's 11.5 points, but just watching the Dolphins fundamentally play together, it's fairly easy, to me. Could the Texans compete? Sure. Maybe, the Texans kind of make some plays, but with what the Dolphins have been able to do, the last game they had at home against the Browns, they shellacked the Browns. I just think this is just a nice, easy pick that I think they win by at least 12, or they at least win by 2 scores. I just think the Dolphins have a good enough defense, even with Emmanuel Ogbah now being out for the year with a torn tricep injury. I think the Dolphins easily just roll and get a very nice, comfortable win to ready themselves for their big game next weekend against the San Francisco 49ers. That's going to be the game of the week. I'm really excited about that game. So that's why I like Miami here minus 11.5 and Miami straight up. The next game, the New York Jets over the Chicago Bears. Boy. Chicago. The Bears have lost now 6 straight one-score games. And Justin Fields, he has been the most entertaining loser since Justin Herbert. That's what I've kind of realized about Justin Herbert. Or Justin Fields. But they're both named Justin. Justin Fields now has a passing and rushing touchdown in 5 straight games, which ties Kyler Murray for the longest streak by a player since 1950. And Justin Fields now leads the league since Week 6 in 640 rushing yards, and he's on pace, depending on the injury, to break the all-time single-season rushing record held by my quarterback, Lamar Jackson. The Bears' offense, I thought, had some nice moments, or Justin Fields was kind of carrying again. Cole Kmet had a great catch. He had the catch of the week, not of the year. That's Justin Jefferson. But he had the catch of the week with that great one-handed grab. And the Bears' defense, for as much maligned as it was, it held the Falcons to 280 total yards. And Darnell Mooney had a great touchdown catch, which let the scoring start for the Bears. Justin Fields, though, did get injured by the end of the game. He was getting an MRI on his shoulder today. And we will see how that goes. But I just think the Bears, they're an entertaining bunch. But I feel like if Justin Fields, if he is out or he has any significant injury that will cause him to miss this week, I think the Jets, as putrid as the Jets' offense was, here's how sad and here's how mad, shout out to Logan Schiff, here's how mad the Jets' defense should be. In 2 games this year against the Patriots, they only allowed 1 offensive touchdown in 2 games, and they were 0-2. They had 2 yards of total offense in the second half, and they had minus 21 passing yards. They had only 102 total yards the entire game. You could have put a scarecrow with a football. You could have put Uncle Rico out there. You could have put me out there. I could have, in my chair, rolled up in a Jets uniform and at least thrown screen passes better than Zach Wilson could. And the prick that Zach is, and the, jerk, the prick, whatever, derogatory, insulting name that you want to call him, the prima donna, entitled brat that he is. After the game, they're talking to him. He's like, well, do you think you have any blame? Did you let the defense down? He was like, nope, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, no, you did everything wrong, buddy. I still believe that man as a quarterback is better than William Lawrence. No doubt. But as a human being, that is the worst person. He is one of the worst people you want to have, especially in that market and in that position to be leading. Like, that is a guy at 23 that it shows everything what all the old people say about, the younger Gen Z generation. That he is the perfect example of that. The spoiled Mormon BYU guy that doesn't see that he has any problems, and boy, does he have a lot of work to do with that Jets team, because if I was one of those Jets defenders, I'd probably want to punch him in the face for acting that, nonchalant about my responsibility in causing a game to where the defense did its job, and you couldn't even get 3 yards of offense in the second half. So, but with that being said, and I know the Bears have won 5 straight games against the Jets. I think again, if Fields is out, I don't think Simeon, can outplay Zach or this offense in this game. I think they'll be able to run the ball better. They'll be able to have some more defensive plays, and I just think again, Simeon, he's a better pure quarterback than Zach, sure, but I just think Zach has enough talent and hopefully has, enough fortitude and insight down below his waist. I hope he has the gumption or understanding to take accountability and work on himself against the Bears team that has been flailing, without their best offensive weapon. If you go with Trevor Siemian with that Bears offense, that's a dying duck waiting to happen, so. Again, would I be surprised if the Bears won? No, even with Trevor Siemian out there, but I think if Fields can't go, or just in the sense of that way, I just think the Bears, I just think the Jets, their defense will cause enough stops and give them enough short fields that Greg Zuerlein can win the game with his foot in a, hopefully a better environment that's less windy. So that's why I like the New York Jets here to win straight up with the Chicago Bears +4. The next game, the Washington Commanders over the Atlanta Falcons. The the Falcons, again, kind of had another weird and awkward game. Another gritty, grindy, dirty, Atlanta dirty, gritty type game. Kyle Pitts had to leave the game because of an MCL injury. But apparently that MCL injury is a tear, and he apparently is going to be out for the rest of the season with that injury, which is a significant aspect because he was arguably their most talented weapon, and with now Calvin Ridley traded. So that means Drake London, it's just Drake and Cordero and everybody else. I do want to say the Falcons running game, the reason why one of the more effective ways they're winning is through their running game, where they have 3 running backs, and Caleb Huntley, Tyler Algier, and Cordero Patterson with over 300 yards each, and Mariota has over 300 yards as well, so they are definitely winning a game with a very unique and consistent variety of running backs controlling the clock, controlling the game. But also, I just think when you look at the Commanders, the key thing the Commanders have been able to do over the last several weeks is force turnovers. When they forced 2 or more turnovers this year, they are now 4-0, and over the last 7 games, they have allowed 21 or fewer points in 7 consecutive games. They're now 5-2 in those games. Also, very quickly, I do want to give a quick shout-out to the Commanders' wide receiver Curtis Samuel, who becomes the 4th wide receiver in Super Bowl era with 2,500 receiving yards, 15 receiving touchdowns, 600 rushing yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns. The other 3 are Jerry Rice, Tyreek Hill, and Eric Metcalf. And the Commanders have held 4 straight opponents under 100 yards rushing. So I feel like if the Commanders can just limit the running game of the Falcons, and you tell the Falcons you have to throw without Kyle Pitts, you just double-team Drake London and let Bryan Edwards, Damiere Byrd, Zacchaeus, you let all those other receivers try to make plays, I don't think it ends up, in a victory for the Falcons. Could the Falcons be competitive? Sure. Look, they've had two different instances where you've had game-winning field goals and game-winning interceptions at the end by mediocre quarterbacks, steal them games. And they are still technically only about a half game out of the NFC South. So they're still in this race. But I just think with the injuries and with how the Commanders have been playing, especially with Taylor Heineke now getting the long-term commitment, I do believe that the Washington Commanders win this game based off the lack of offense the Falcons have by the Commanders shutting down the running game. So that's why I like Washington here -3 and Washington straight up. The next game in the cruddy toss-up game of the week, the Denver Broncos over the Carolina Panthers. This is one to where, look, you have 2 very inept offenses. Russell Wilson this year, for as much as I love him, he's been arguably the worst quarterback in the NFL. He has thrown only multiple touchdowns once this year, and here's a crazy thing that everybody has to realize. So if the Broncos could put up 18 points a game this year, they could be 8-1. They could be exactly the poor man version of the Minnesota Vikings. And that'd still be the 28th ranked offense in the league. But if the Broncos offense, just think about that, put up 18 points a game, they would be an 8-1 football team in regulation, and they'd be in a better spot or a team that can make the playoffs. They have 3 overtime losses, which I believe has to be the most in the league this year. And their defense, still phenomenal. In 10 games this year, they've given them a grand total of 13 total offensive touchdowns. You take out the overtime one against the Raiders, 12. They got them 12 total touchdowns in 10 games this year. That is absurdly phenomenal defense. Absurdly consistent. Also, here's the other side part of how bad the offense is. Nearly 46% of the points that the Broncos have scored have come from Brandon McManus, their kicker. He's accounted for 46% of the offense. And they just got Melvin Gordon. And Chase Edmonds, the gunning back they got from Miami, he now has a high ankle sprain, so now they're on their 3rd string running back, who I think would be Mike Boone at this point. So, that's a horrible team. But they're playing an equally bad Panther team. Like I said, Brandon already got his first interception. Baker now has lost 6 times against the Ravens. Baker got sacked 4 times. They couldn't run the ball a lick. And, when you look at that, though, I just feel like with this game, if you take the offenses out of the way, this is the awkward one where it's not the offenses. Usually in bad games like this, you go with the better quarterback. You can't go with either one. So in this one, I'm going to go with the better defense, and that's clearly been the Denver Broncos. I think the Denver Broncos cause enough stops to let their offense score enough to win the game. Would I be surprised if Carolina won this game? Not at all. But if you're going to tell me which defense do I have to rely on more, give me Denver's over Carolina's with Baker or whoever, or Sam or whoever that they want to play, put them up against. So, man, this is going to be the worst game of the week. It's a horrible game to pick, but I'm going to go with the better defense, and that's why I took Denver. And I'm being dead serious. If this game was +3, I would have easily taken Carolina +3 on the line to go with that. So that's why I like Denver here, -2.5, and Denver straight up. The next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, the Baltimore Ravens have the third best rushing defense in the league. I'm sorry, the Panthers. The Ravens, they have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, and the Ravens are second in the league in terms of takeaways with 19. Only the Eagles have more takeaways than the Baltimore Ravens this year. And Roquan Smith has done phenomenal. He's had 8 combined total tackles and a sack in his first 2 games as a Raven. And also, I'm going to congratulate DeMarcus Robinson with his 129 yards receiving. That is the second most receiving yards for him in a game in his career. When you look at the Ravens, it was ugly. Lamar in that offense, definitely for all the Lamar fans out there, where's your boy at? Where all your happy boy at? You were pumped up, and he throws for about 150 yards, gets a rushing touchdown at the end that basically seals it. We were literally patch jets till about 45, or till about 50 minutes left in the game. We were literally watching patch jets, the same thing, except you had 2, guys from the 18 class instead of the 21 class, so it was just older. But the Ravens did win, and look, it was ugly, but you'll take it. And they won 4 straight, and they're in a good position with how the rest of the AFC has to shape out, that they could get the number 1 seed at the end just due to their very weak schedule. And look, they continue with that. The Jags are 3-7. I mentioned about the point differential, but the only positive thing the 2 positive things out they have offensively is Travis Etienne is top 10 in the league in terms of rushing yards, and Christian Kirk leading the team with 7 touchdowns. He's done a good job, but the defense has been underwhelming in a lot of ways. The other Josh Allen, the defensive player, only has 3 sacks this year. He's not even leading the team. And, this is a weird game because I think the Jags, they have the offensive talent, and you're going into Jacksonville where the Jags have played a little bit more consistently. 2 of their 3 wins were there, and 2 of those wins, one was a 17-point comeback against the Raiders, and the other one was shutting out the Colts. And the Jags and Ravens in the last 8 games in this series have split the games 4 apiece. So this will be a tiebreaker, out of the best of 9. But at the end of the day, when you're giving me the Ravens roster with what they have, Mark Andrews coming back, maybe with Deshaun Jackson, kind of getting more involved in, and just Lamar's playmaking or Trevor Lawrence's, I'm going to take the Ravens. I think the Ravens have a better running attack. The Ravens have better, positions. And the Ravens just have had better luck in these games to where, if they had that lead, they've been able to hold on better compared to the Jags. So, it should be an interesting game. I do think the Jags will play a much better game compared to the Panthers, but we shall see about that one. So, but I'm going to take the Ravens, their culture, their history, and just it's Trevor Lawrence, and he just can't seem to win these games to save his life. So, that's why I'm going to go with the Ravens. So, that's why I like Baltimore here, -4, and Baltimore straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Arizona Cardinals. This one to me was fairly easy based on the fact that the Chargers, man, they have a lot of talent, but they just can't seem to get a close stub, or they can't seem to hold on to a win. The Chargers, Keenan Allen had a very nice game back in his first game in about 7 or 8 weeks. He had 5 receptions for 94 yards in his return, including a great one that set up the game-leading touchdown to Josh Palmer. But the biggest problem for the Chargers was, once again, at the end of the game, 2 fourth-quarter turnovers, one by Keenan Allen, the other by Justin Herbert, the interception to Nick Bolton. That killed them. And this is the 3rd game this year that they've won a fourth-quarter lead. 2 of them, unfortunately, were against the Chiefs. So, but when you look at that, they're playing a Cardinal team that, look, Colt McCoy is starting tonight. Colt or Kyler, it's not going to matter to me. I just, I do think it will be interesting if Colt McCoy is able to win this game tonight against the 49ers. I'm just going to put this out there. I might let Colt McCoy finish the year out. I'm just saying, Colt McCoy has played better in the limited amount of sample than Kyler Murray has through the 4 games. If he wins. If he loses, okay, fine, you go back to Kyler. But if Colt McCoy's 4-0, you could start seriously having a question here. Let Kyler take the time that he wants to have for that hamstring. And also, DeAndre Hopkins is doing phenomenal. He's only been in 4 games, and he's already the 4th leading receiver on the team. Hollywood Brown still, even with his injury, is still the leading receiver on the team, about 450 yards. That's amazing. That's just sad, too, that, Hopkins can be that effective that quickly and, nobody else really can separate. Also, losing Zach Ertz is a significant injury. Hopefully, Ertz will be okay moving forward. But, yeah, that injury was big, too. Also, I just feel like, again, the Chargers, they have the better kicking situation. They just have a better vibe, and I just trust what the Chargers have talent-wise at quarterback compared to Kyler. And even if Mike Williams can't play because of his ankle, I just think the Chargers find a way to win this game. And Staley makes fewer mistakes than Cliff Kingsbury. I'll just put it that way. And the Chargers, fun fact, they're trying to look for their first road win in Arizona since 2002. So that's why I like the Los Angeles Chargers here, -2.5, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. The next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the Las Vegas Raiders. With Derek Carr, look, Derek Carr now has 8 overtime victories. He's now 8-2 in overtime games in his career. That is the highest win percentage by any player with 10 such games ahead of Tom Brady. So, if you get the game to overtime, you're probably going to lose Derek Carr. Also, Derek Carr has his 30-second game-winning drive, which is the most in the NFL since he's been drafted. And now Devontae Adams caught his 3rd career overtime touchdown, tying was his 3rd career overtime touchdown, which ties him with LaDainian Tomlinson for the most in NFL history. Max Crosby, the only team he really could play against is the Denver Broncos, apparently, because 4 of his 9 sacks this year have come against the Broncos. And Josh Jacobs has killed the Broncos in both games. He averaged in both games this year 167.5 yards from scrimmage, and every one of those yards they needed, except I really was angry at him because he should have stepped out of bounds. That could have given the Raiders an opportunity to go for an opportunity to touchdown instead of the 3 plays they ran at the end. Also, very quickly, I can't believe I'm saying this, keep this on tape, 51 minutes and 42 seconds. Thank you, Josh McDaniels. You got me a win. Thank you. That's the only time I'm going to say that. Now back to hating on the Raiders. They are playing the Seahawks here. Look, Cody Barton got the 399 pass Tom Brady picked off, which was the 2nd longest streak in NFL history. Geno, had a big fumble in the game, which basically turned the tide for the Buccaneers to win. And also, look, Pete Carroll is 7-5 coming off a bye, so he's pretty good at this. And here's the fun fact, the reason why I'm going with the Seahawks by the 4 points. Josh McDaniels, after his 6-0 coaching start, which everybody bragged about, he has only been able to win back-to-back games one other time, and every other time he has been a head coach in this league. So I think this game could be interesting because that Seattle defense is not great, and if Jacobs and Adams can make some plays, but I think with the Seattle defense, they have some better pass rushers. They seem to have a better vibe and talent compared to the Broncos. And I just think Geno outplays Carr, and I think Geno, with his mobility and the weapons he has, wins this game in a tight one up in the Pacific Northwest. So that's why I like Seattle here -4 and Seattle straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Los Angeles Rams. The Chiefs are the best team in the AFC, arguably the best team in the entire league. The Rams are an absolute dumpster fire. This is the first 4-game losing streak for McVay in his career, and the first 4-game losing streak for the Rams overall since 2016. But here's positive. At least they ran for 148 yards. The yards didn't matter, but at least they did that. Also, the Rams have not had a 300-yard passer from Matthew Stafford, John Wolford, or Bryce Perkins in any which way. And if you take out the 62-yard touchdown pass to Tutu Atwell before Stafford got hurt, Matthew Stafford up to that point in the game had gone 10-17 for 97 yards and a touchdown. That was it. That was against the Saints defense, which, remember before, they had a streak where they put up, they were putting up 40 points, and they gave up 40 points. And the Rams couldn't do jack with that. And look, they're playing the Chiefs here, who are just rolling. Travis Kelce, another 3 touchdowns, 33rd career game of 100 yards. He has the most 100-yard games for a tight end in NFL history. He also has 11 TD catches this year. He's had 8 touchdowns in prime time. And the only other players with those in the season were also Randy Moss and Jerry Rice back in 87 and 2007, respectively. And he becomes the 3rd tight end in NFL history to have 2 walk-off touchdowns against the same team. That's Jason Witten for the Cowboys and Shannon Sharp for the Broncos against the Jags and Eagles, respectively. Also, look, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is just sensational on the road. He is 14-0 in division road games. That is the 2nd longest streak in NFL history. I believe only Joe Montana at 20 games from 1983 to 1992 is the only other longest streak there. And Isaiah Pacheco, and Pacheco. I screwed his name up. I apologize. Please don't get named. He had 100 yards rushing, which was for the first time for a Chiefs running back since week 4 last year of a 100-yard rusher. and they lost Allaire, and they lost Tony, and they didn't have Juju or Miko in the game in the beginning. What a performance by Mahomes and that team. Everybody knew as soon as Mahomes, got the ball back with minute 46, everybody knew he was going to go down and score. Pretty much felt that way. So, can the Rams compete? Maybe if Stafford plays, but I honestly think at this point, Cup's out for another 5 to 7 weeks. Stafford's going to have 2 concussions within a week. I just think you shut both of them down and just basically tank for your pick or whatever the Jags get. It's sad, but, that's what the Rams basically are at this point. And I think the Chiefs just easily roll over them. In a game that was really exciting a few years ago, that was that great Mexico City shootout, 51-48, or 54-51. This game is not going to be that by any means. So, and that's why I'm taking the Chiefs here, -14, and the Chiefs straight up. The next game, the San Francisco 49ers over the New Orleans Saints. Look, Andy Dalton was great. He was 21-25 for 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a 127 quarterback rating. And Cam Jordan is dealing with an orbital fracture, so that was the first time in his career he had missed a game. And Taysom Hill was their leading rusher. And the Niners and Saints have split the last 6 games. And Jimmy's 10-2 now in his career where he does not throw a touchdown, which is an NFL record. It's kind of amazing when I saw that. But, in this game, look, could the Saints be competitive? Sure. I think the Saints, they have a gritty defense. They, they know how to play the Niners. They, played them tough. I know this is a different Saints team than it was, back in 2019, the last time these two teams played. But I think at the end of the day, the Niners, they just have way more talent. They have better offensive weapons. And I just think Jimmy plays a much more smoother game at home compared to what happened the last time. He won that shootout against Breeze before. But I just think the Niners, they're just more consistent, better defense. The defense has held 300 yards of offense or under for the last several weeks, or 7 to 9 games. They're going to be on a good roll, and I just think the Niners just continue rolling into that big game against the Dolphins coming up next week, which is going to be my favorite game of the week next week. So that's why I like San Francisco here to win straight up, and New Orleans plus 8.5. Then the final 2 games, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Green Bay Packers. Christian Watson, good for him. He's had 5 touchdowns in the last 2 games after having none through the first 8, or through the first 9. But the Packers, one of the key things, they are 1-4 this year when they rush for under 100 yards. Rodgers had 16 straight games under 300 yards passing. And this is statistically Aaron Rodgers' worst season of his career. They're playing an Eagle team that has not looked sensational over the last couple weeks. But for the first time in 12 years, the Eagles made a comeback at 10-plus points in the fourth quarter. Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph both had a half sack in their debut on a split sack of Matt Ryan. And also, after Jonathan Taylor had 49 yards rushing in the first drive of the game, the Colts as a team had 50 total rushing yards combined at the end of the game. And Jalen's leading the league in rushing touchdowns at 8. And I just feel like with the Packers here, this is their last shot. And I just don't think they respond to the bell. The Packers secondary, will get burned by the Eagles receivers. I think the Eagles running game should do a very nice job. And I just see with the Eagles secondary, I can't see Rodgers having a good game, especially with that offensive line as well, with Hassan, with Graham, with all the pass rushers the Eagles can throw at him. I think the Eagles win this game and put the kibosh on the brats of the Packers, or the kibosh on the Packers for their 2022 season. Sounds like Philadelphia here, -6.5, Philadelphia straight up. And finally, the Colts over the Steelers, the Indianapolis Colts over the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is just where, look, I've been impressed with Jeff Saturday over the last couple games. Chase McLaughlin's 19-23 of field goals. They've played more consistent defense. They've gotten a couple more turnovers. Matt Ryan's played okay. And I just think with Kenny Pickett and that Steeler team, Pickett's had 2 straight games without a turnover. And Najee Harris had his first game with multiple touchdowns this year. But I just feel like the Colts are just playing better. And I'm going to trust Matt Ryan to make a few more plays than Kenny Pickett, with both quarterbacks being bad. And I just trust the Colts offensive line to get to the Pittsburgh defensive line, and the Colts to win another gritty type of tough game. And if it comes down to kicking, I'll trust McLaughlin over Matthew Wright at this point. So that's what I like Indy here, -2.5 in Indianapolis straight up. But those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the other NFL YouTube prognosticators and other people I have in my description and my page below for other great sports content. And until next week, this is Matthew Fanatic signing off. Good luck to all players, coaches, teams, fellow prognosticators, and fantasy players. And happy Thanksgiving from me to all my viewers out there. Enjoy the 3 F's of Thanksgiving, family, food, and football. And until next week, this is Matthew Fanatic signing off. Until next time, everybody, so long.